Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
I will give my
Happy Veterans Day.
yes, for sure. I'll give my
Right?
short little intro. We are doing the second in our leadership series today. Today we are talking about how to stay on track when the world around you isn't. I don't think there could be a more timely topic right now. Not sure about you guys, but I hear the word COVID about 70,000 times a day. So, I think that's probably what is off track about the world, but these things can apply. We all know other things happen that take our world a little off track. So, as I've mentioned before, you guys are eligible for one-on-one appointments with Lori. I will put that information in the chat of how to reach out for those appointments, and I'll follow up with you as well. And I'm going to hand it off to Lori because, like I said, we have a lot to share and want to get it all in.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. Happy to be with you midweek. And again, happy Veterans Day and happy sunny sunshine day. At least it is where I am. So that's nice to see the sun today. I want to say to you all right off the bat, because I think being transparent is a good thing. So we all have different things that we're juggling right now. And I think it's quite ironic that the title of this workshop, How to Stay on Track When the World Around You Isn't, is currently I am sitting in front of 3 computers. And the only thing that is working is my phone. So we've all had to manage those days when the world around us isn't on track, but we figure out a way to make it work. So thank you, Michelle, for helping out. So everybody can hear okay? We're all good?
Can everyone still see the shared screen? I feel like something just, okay, very good.
Okay, cool. All right. So the next slide, so this is our welcome slide. The next slide, I just want to welcome back any of those of you who were here last week. And if there's any new folks, that's great. So the question is, any thoughts from last week's session? I would love to hear if anybody applied anything or woke up in the middle of the night and thought of something that was useful. So Christopher, I see a yes there. Anything you'd like to share with us? Saying yes, I can hear. Oh, oh darn! I thought you had something to jump right in there. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts about the styles that we talked about, or common ground? Any of that maybe had some relevance for you, especially as you were trying to engage your folks or get more buy-in from them or include them in decision making? Anything at all? There's a trick, just you guys probably know this, but like if you're giving a presentation or even on a Zoom call, if you leave it silent for 7 seconds, there usually will be somebody that is so uncomfortable with the silence that they will kick in. But I guess when we're all on mute, it doesn't work that way. So I'll move on. So there, at the end of last week's presentation, I had included a survey. We didn't do it, and you don't need to do it, but I just want to remind you that it's there. So that way, if you later on want to reflect, that's something that you can use. So let's move on to today's topic and move to the next slide. So I want to just talk a little bit about, well, what does it mean to be on or off track? Because I think on a daily basis, any of us could say, today wasn't one of those days where things went well. And then there are days where like, wow, yeah, I got things done, things are good. However, I would think people would say 2020 has turned out to be an issue where, or not an issue, but just a time where we're all trying to find our way for a variety of reasons. And we probably each have a list of, 100 or more. So I think not only when we're in this situation, but also when you own your own business and you're running your own business and you're running your life, it just feels a little more complicated. And I would like to know from you all, and seriously, I would, if anybody would be willing to share, is as a small business owner, how do you think it's different kind of for us as we run our businesses that might be a little bit different than, let's say, somebody who has a full-time job and their job is stable and they've got all the support behind them in terms of technology and they've got income stable coming in and so forth. What do you think might be a little bit different, and let's say a little maybe harder for folks like us that own our own businesses? Anybody willing to share?
I think there's huge difference. You know, we're building our dreams, right? We're facing the challenges of will we be open tomorrow? A lot of small businesses are closed. You know, where you have people that have their guaranteed 9-to-5s, which kind of is a weird space to say guaranteed right now because there's really no guarantees right now. But it's just still, we're always constantly you know, building and trying to pivot and trying to figure out what's going to work. I know for us now, we're trying to figure out how to make an adult daycare be online because we may have to shut down for a couple more months, you know, this winter because of COVID. So I think there's endless differences, and it's definitely harder for the small business owner.
Thank you very much for that. An adult day is probably a particularly challenging business. You know, again, there's layers, right? And it sounds like you have some additional layers. Someone else, what do you feel like might be a difference as a small business owner? Is it 7 seconds yet? So I'll share my story a bit, just because I'm a small business owner as well. And so perhaps that gives you a little perspective on where I'm coming from. So a lot of the work that I do is meet with folks face-to-face, one-on-one, obviously, or we do a large classroom, small workshops, small team building sessions. And we also travel far and wide to do that. We have a lot of work in Kansas City, but we also travel many, many other places. And so last March, when it became apparent that those things were going to start shutting down, or our clients started saying, hey, we've got budget cuts, we can't travel, we aren't going to invest in development right now. So I can remember, as most of you probably can, sort of every day, 4 o'clock comes along and there's a press conference and I'm trying to listen to what's going on, and the panic of I should be on LinkedIn every day, giving people advice, weighing in, having all these wonderful things to say, where quite honestly, I was kind of thinking, what am I doing? And so after a couple of weeks, I sort of sat down with my group virtually. And we made a strategy, and we sort of had a first, second, third, fourth, I called it phase strategy. And the first strategy was just keep in touch with our clients. In other words, I said, we are not going to promote anything. We are not going to sell anything. We are going to keep in touch with our clients because they are struggling right now. And they don't need people doing anything but encouraging them. So that was kind of phase one. And I won't go into the other phases, but for me and for the folks that I work with, my team, we needed something that says we have a path here, because for a month we kind of struggled about what is it that we should be doing. And so how do we maximize the use of our time? And then obviously trying to take advantage of anything and everything that we could that was being offered in terms of the stimulus. So that's just a quick and dirty for me. And when you're the leader of the organization, as you all are, those are your decisions and you got to make them. And if you're sort of not on track and feeling good about things, it's hard to project that to other folks. And hopefully if you have a team of people, or even one person or a spouse or a family or whatever that can encourage you, to me, that is so important during this time. So that's a little bit of story about me. And I'm just saying that because as we go into the next phases of what we're going to be talking about is, you know, you're not alone. We talked last week about common ground. We all have a lot of common ground when it comes to all of this. And it's not just small business owners or Americans, it is the universe, literally. So if nothing else, we're all alone. We're all together struggling a little bit. And then trying to think a little bit about, what's thrown us off track and what's kept us on track, whatever that means. Some of us have a looser track than others. I don't even know if that's the right term, but in terms of what we expect and what kinds of boundaries and parameters we need to feel good, like, okay, I'm in control of my life right now versus, man, things are a mess. And so that varies among people, but for the definition for you, what's kept you on track and what's gotten you off of track. The next thing, and this is the most important part of today that I hope will be helpful to you, because it's helpful to me, and this is something I've used a lot. And it's just what's holding me back. And I mentioned this drivers and restrainers last week when we talked about delegating. And so in this case, what's holding me back? What are the opposing forces for me to be able to stay on track? And then what's driving me? What are some things that are, keeping me going? And those are important because some of those things you have no control over, but some of them you do. And instead of trying to attack 15 things, let's pick a couple that we can actually be in charge of and do something about. So that's why it's pick 2 and go do. So what I'm hoping today, again, in a short amount of time, is to help you guys think about, and quite honestly, it's good for me even, to continue to think about what is it that I'm in control of, and don't try and do it all. Let's focus. What are a couple of things that we can do and go do it? So that's what's going on for today, and I hope that it will be helpful for you. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about, real quick, the guidelines we had. This isn't a lecture, so I really, really would love participation. I am a talker, and I'm sure you will get tired of hearing me talk. So if you can offer up questions either through chat or comments through chat, and Michelle can share them, that's great. Or if you want to unmute and do it yourself, that would be great. And we'd love your insights, because this is a particular topic where we all have had experiences that I think can help each other. So we can go to the next slide now. So this could probably have a list of, maybe 87 or 88 things at least on it, but we're limited to a certain number. So choose your top 2. What has thrown you off track this year? Pick your top 2. I'll give you a few minutes to look at this nice long list. How are we doing there, Michelle? All right. So let's see who the winners are. It looks like the winner is, anybody surprised about those, the top 2? And by the way, can somebody confirm that you can hear me? Because I feel like I'm not getting any audio back from anyone. Can someone just say yes?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. All right. So obviously the personal, family, all the stuff that we're being tugged at, and then the whole worldly issues. So those are the top 2. So when you look at those, anybody want to share about either one of those and how that's gotten you off track, just at a real honest level? Like, what's it been like, even if it's just 20 seconds of what it's been like for either one of those and how they've thrown you off track?
Jump in on that one, Lori.
Well-
So,
I'm sorry.
I can jump in on that one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the part about personal and family needs have required more. In my situation, my mother was diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of this year, and she had just started her chemo the last week of February before the world turned upside down. And so on top of just dealing with everything we would have already been dealing with my mom's diagnosis, somehow we've been trying to figure out how to keep our family going and how do I keep up my schedule and how do I manage to get any work done if there is any work to be done. And
Right.
it has been just an exponential acceleration of stress and managing time and managing what to do and when to do it, setting priorities and figuring out how to just get from day to day while I've been dealing with my mom's situation all the way through this entire summer and now into the fall.
That's huge. And that's a big juggle. And that is definitely difficult in normal situations, let alone what we're going through now. That's a great example and an unfortunate example, but thanks for sharing. Somebody else want to share what they've been juggling?
I'll share, Lori. So I'll merge the two. How about that? So
There you
COVID,
go.
I think COVID was the beginning for a lot of people juggling new things because I've just become a school teacher for like first grade, fourth grade, freshman and junior, on top of, trying to run a business that we had to shut down a couple of months during the first shutdown. And so then I'm getting to watch my numbers, our projections, which we've grown every year consistently, like we've jumped in our growth. And then looking at our first quarter numbers in comparison to last year's first quarter is like, wow. It's just night and day. So, it's just been fun and challenging to juggle becoming a teacher and still running a business. And, then you have employees underneath you who you're responsible for. You feel like, as a CEO, you're responsible for their paychecks and their livelihood. So, dealing with that is, it's been a lot.
Absolutely. It's mind-boggling if you think about it. And I guess the reason that I wanted to start off this way, you guys, is because there are some days where I feel myself, and maybe I deserve it some days, but sort of beating myself up thinking, what have I been doing? What have I accomplished? What's the business doing? And made some pretty significant changes in my personal life as well, based on some things affected by COVID. So, and then recently I've had some time to reflect, and I guess I would ask all of you to do this as well before we move on, is if you're off track, then I think you're probably like 99.9% of the population. And really, what is the definition of on track right now? And in a way, I think if you have kept your head above water, if you still have relationships that are solid, if you still have a roof over your head, there are things that are pretty darn basic. And so I guess this sounds a little corny, but I think just to feel some appreciation for what you all have done for yourselves, and just a gratitude that things, I guess, could be worse. And so that's all I want to say about that. But I definitely want people to take a breath and give themselves a little bit of grace, if you will, for having made it this far through the year. The other thing I will say is that if you look at that list of things that have thrown you off track, and this is going to be a common theme as we talk today, is what's under your control. Some of those things are just not under your control, or very little is under your control. If you look at number 4, that's not under our control. It just isn't. At some days it seems like number 6, my mental state is not under my control. It's gone. Or maybe your preferred style of operating has gotten in the way. And I can't control that I can't be face-to-face right now, but what else can I do because I like to be around people or whatever. So thinking about what's under your control, I think, is a big one. Is there anything else? I had an others commentary. Did anybody comment on that, Michelle? I was just curious.
No, not outside of the ones that
Okay. All right. Let's keep moving then. All right. So we've talked about what's kept us off track, but let's think about things that have kept us on track. And in this one, especially if you have others, I'd like to hear about them because these are just things that have worked for either people that I know or myself. So select your top 2 here.
I believe it only let us check one.
Oh,
Pardon?
I think I might not have said it for multiple choice, which for the record is what has kept me off track, technology.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
off
that
track,
might have
yeah.
been my fault. Pick your top one and you can add into other,
Yeah.
did lead right into what has kept me off track. So that was perfect.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? That's
Okay, I think
touche.
everyone has voted. So there are
Okay, let's see what we got. All right, so any surprises about these choices? There's a little bit more variety here. And I would imagine it was probably hard to pick the top 2. If you look at 2 of those, your support that you have gotten and faith or conviction about life, those are 2 really big ones. And those are sort of deep-seated and things that we hope will keep us not just in times like this, but anytime. I mean, we all need support. We all need, something to hold on to, whatever that might be. The contingency plans, learn something new, virtual or remote working, obviously, those are just very practical things. You've had to do that. If there wasn't a contingency plan, you had to develop one pretty quickly. And I think that's a good skill to learn, is to be able to pivot, as somebody said earlier, quickly. We've all had to learn new things, the virtual remote stuff, easier for some of us than others. So again, congratulations to all of y'all for figuring all of that out. And if you look at this list and think of what you've been able to accomplish and what you've relied on, again, you can do it. There are things that you're able to have an impact on and under control. So thank you for that. It's just kind of interesting to see what people are relying on. Did we have anything else that folks had to share, Michelle?
Yeah, a couple said if they could have selected a second one, it was going to be the sense of humor, which, in my mind was number one. Yeah. You kind of have to laugh so you don't cry each day. Some days, yeah.
Right. That's a good one. And I think therein lies the rabbit hole of social media, however, because there are so many fun little things that friends and family send you, even if it's just a text or even which you kind of feel like you have to respond to, versus Facebook, which, shame on me if I'm on that all the time, which I shouldn't be, but sometimes you just need that laugh and, something so absurd or whatever. So yeah, sense of humor is important. That's good. All right. Thank you for allowing me to get some more information about what's kept you off and on track, because it's good to be self-reflective about that and think about what's worked for you and then maybe where you need to dig in a little deeper. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide. So take heed, you're not alone, common ground. I had this image of myself putting together this wonderful collage of 1,000 pictures of what's gone on in 2020, but it didn't materialize. But in my mind, I'm thinking, geez, we've all got a lot of common ground right now. And maybe that's something that we should build on, because we are not alone. I also wanted to reinforce that because that was a concept that we talked about last week, and the importance of building common ground with our employees, with our staff, with our customers, our clients, our vendors, whomever. What is it that we know that they need, and what is it that we're sharing with them that we need? So those are some things I think that will help us stay on track. So we can go on to the next slide. So I've sort of done this already, but I thought, we really do need to take a time out, which is, I hope, what you've felt so far is that, what's thrown you off track, what's helped you stay on track. And then there's a couple of questions. What have you lost track of? And that's kind of a long list, at least for me personally, and some folks that I know, we're where did that go? Where it might be a thing, it might be a thought, it might be an idea. In our own little group, we had a conversation last week, and one of my coworkers said, remember like 2 months ago when we said we were going to do X? And I'm like, oh yeah, that was on our list. And so that's why we need help from each other to help us stay on track. And I had lost track of something pretty important in terms of reaching out and business development stuff. And then the last one is, you know what, maybe we've figured out some things that needs to be off the track. I don't need to wear, this is kind of nice, what needs to be off track. I don't have to wear, professional clothes every day, at least, for certain parts of my body. Anyway, so there are some things that can be off track and off the track, and maybe that's a lesson learned through all of this time period. So that's our time out for a minute to breathe. All right, this is the part where I beg of someone to help me with an example when we get to it. And this will not be embarrassing or revealing, or it might be, I don't know. But I just need some help because this is an exercise that for me has helped me when I am overwhelmed and I'm trying to either get on track or stay on track. And there are 1,000 things in front of me and I don't know where to start. And so I would highly advise that you guys use this. I showed it last week, again, when we were talking about delegating. It's called force field analysis. It's a very simple concept and it's been around a long time, but the basic concept of it, you guys, is just saying, what's keeping me off track? So if you look at that line, the horizontal line with the red arrows above it, that's saying, what's pushing me down? What's keeping me down? That line is my goal, or what do I want to accomplish, or the way I want my life to be. And these are all the things that are pushing that down. And then on the bottom, so on the lower right, so what are all the things that are saying, no, these are the things that are keeping me on track, or that are, maybe even motivating me. My kids got to learn. So that's something I got to figure out how to get those kids in school, or, I've got to make some income. And, if it's not through the business, there might be some other ways I can earn income or whatever. So force field analysis in general is simply a tool that you can use. And I like to use this too with a small group and say, have everybody have input into this. So for example, if you want to use your team or your employees to say, hey guys, what's bringing us down and what's bringing us up? And let's don't attack all of them, but let's figure out what are going to be the ones that are going to give us the most bang for our buck. So let's go to the next slide. So I think if you want to go back one, I think the first one was opposing. Yeah, thank you. Good, thank you. Okay, so do I have a volunteer that will help me with this? And what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to talk about what your goals are and what you thought things were going to be like when 2020 started and all that good stuff. And then things went off track. And I'm going to ask you some questions about that and kind of help work through a tool that will hopefully even help you and the others on the call to think about a plan to get on track. So who is going to be my volunteer?
I will be your guinea pig if no one else on the call wants to, so that they can hear the process. But
okay.
Patricia,
anybody else?
Patricia unmuted. She writes.
I was trying to be silent too, just in case someone else wanted to talk. I know everyone gets sick of my voice, but either myself or Michelle is fine.
Okay, so let's just go through this, and I'm going to typically, if I was in a group or if I had access to the media that I thought I was going to have today, I would actually type this up here. But so I'm just going to ask you some questions, and this is how it works. So Patricia, what are the things that have kept you off track? Name 4 or 5, just boom, boom, boom. What's kept you off track? And you can be specific to your business. And I know number 1 is probably the childcare thing, but go ahead and say whatever it is that is important for you.
Number 1 would have been COVID. 2 would have definitely been the becoming a teacher and having to juggle that, and then the third that has kept me off track would probably be all the madness in my head. Like I've got a great team that's trying to help me, but my head is like all over the place with trying to organize the way life looks now. So I think that's something that's definitely keeping me off track.
Okay, so some of the things that I heard were COVID absolutely is something that is impacting you. Adding another job to your plate, being a teacher is a huge one. The madness in your head. And so all of us have madness in our heads if we're honest with ourselves. And we have different ways of dealing with that. And I think that's important that you mentioned that. And then I'm going to just paraphrase a little bit, but you said like trying to stay organized. What can I do to stay organized and on top of things? Would that be a fair summary?
It's really trying to figure out how to organize the madness in my head. You know,
Oh,
that's
okay.
the
So it really
organization
does
I'm
go back up
talking
to
about.
madness.
Yeah.
Okay. Madness is a big deal for Patricia. All right. So those are her some of her opposing forces, things that are bringing her down, right? Okay. Let's go to the next slide and say, what are some things that are keeping you going? Like what's saying, hey, you know what? These things are important and they're going to keep me moving forward. These are the motivating things that are helping keep me on track. What would those be?
I have a cheat sheet over here because I actually answered those questions already on my little takeaways. But I'd say first my family, because they've been so amazing in the transition, right? So I'm really alone. Well, not really alone in my madness, but I'm sure my madness is like way bigger than it has to be. Because my family, the transition into the homeschooling, and I mean, it's just been really nice and a lot easier. Everybody's taken more responsibility. They've all stepped up more, and that's been amazing, right? So that's definitely a driving force. And then I have a great team in Margaret's Place, from my leadership team to my staff who are just 100% there and down for the dream and for the pivots, for the rebuild, and to tell me to just breathe and everything is going to be okay. And you don't have to have all the madness, but I'm still trying to organize that and sort that and believe what they're saying to me because you're not used to having a team. So I think that those two would be like what drives me all the way through, the opposition and the madness.
Okay. Is there anything else that is continuing to drive you? You know, you've talked about your dream, and it sounds to me like you've used that word a lot. So I'm going to write that down as a driving force because it sounds like you have a really strong mission and a vision for what you want your business to be. Yeah. And that is something that it feels to me as you're talking, like you rely on that. Like it's not out of sight.
Yeah, I think that might drive my team crazy sometimes, but maybe it'd be a good thing. But yeah, I think my mission and my purpose, really, I'm living in my purpose and walking in my faith. And I think that would probably be number one on what's really driving me. And I think my team and my family is the supporting drivers, maybe, that's really pushing that number one mission. I mean, because that's creating generational wealth for my family. That's kind of helping people in my community. So yeah, that's definitely the first driving force. And the rest is just what makes that possible, maybe.
Right. Well, and I think, again, keeping that in mind, and what I think is interesting is I haven't heard anybody really sort of talk overtly about, I got to make money. Isn't it interesting that we're all in business, right, to earn a living and to make money, but it's all of this other stuff around us that we have to address and get to before we get to that point. So I think that's kind of interesting. So here's how the force field analysis works, and let's just show folks through Patricia how this might work. So if you go to the next slide. So the first thing I want to say is what's in your control. And so I'm going to go down the list of Patricia's, and then I'm just going to circle them. And then I'm going to ask you the next question. So the things that were opposing forces or keeping you off track, you mentioned was COVID, being a teacher and the time that takes, and the madness in your head. Of those three things, which of those are under your control?
Being a teacher, right?
Okay.
because that is just is. And then I think that might be it. I would like to say the madness in my head, but that's definitely not it. And I have no control over COVID or any of its things, or I'd snap my fingers and we'd all be living a better life. So just the teaching, which is what my team is telling me. So I love them.
Okay. So that's great. And so that doesn't rule out the other two though. Okay. In this process, it's easier to impact things that are 100% under your control. It's not as easy to impact things that are not under your control, but it doesn't mean that you can't impact them. So we'll get to that in just a second because we want to get a plan together for you here. Okay. So let's go to the next one, which is if addressed, what is the one thing that would make the biggest impact on your ability to get on track or stay on track on both sides? So I want you to think about that both from the opposing list and the driving list. Okay, so if you think about if you could impact how you handle COVID, how you handle teaching, how you handle madness in your head, if you could solve for or make the biggest impact on one of those three things right now, because it might be something that you're already doing well at and you think I want to do more of it, or it might be, you know what, that madness in my head, that might be the one thing I really want to focus on over between now and the end of the year or whatever. So pick one from that list for me. Just pick one.
It would be your example, the madness in my head. It's so funny that we're calling it the madness in my head because it's really not that bad, but but it's definitely, I think that if I can figure out, because I'm so used to doing it by myself, right? And I mean, when I say by myself, I've always had great resources like, the SBDC or, KC SourceLink or, building my business. I've had great resources and I've had people in my corner, but I've never really had a team. So I'm used to dealing and organizing the madness in my head by myself. And it seems to have worked so far. But now I have like this whole group of people who are down and willing to help build the dream and 100% there. And I'm learning how to delegate and I'm learning how to sort things out. So if I could really tackle, when I say the madness in my head, is if I could really learn how to delegate and really, use my team for what they're great at, as opposed to giving them something and then taking it back because they didn't do it just like I would have or something like that, I would definitely tackle that one.
Great. That's perfect. Okay. So I'm going to circle that one for you. And this is the process, you guys, is you might have a long list. Just choose one, because then from that one, you can make make a few steps forward that could make a big impact. And if you try and do everything, it's just going to kind of water everything down. So let's go to the other one. You talked about in terms of what's driving you, your family. You have a great team and staff that's been able to pivot and help you breathe, and then your dream. And so again, of that list, and I kind of expanded on it a little bit for you, if you could focus on one of those that you think would help push you forward and push that goal line up a little bit, which of those do you think would be worth it for you to spend some time in thinking about what that would look like?
Which one that?
Yeah, so so if your family, it sounds to me like your family has been a good driving force, like they've been not only supportive, but because of your extra job, they've been helpful. So you may feel like that one's pretty under control, and you might say, and it really is kind of funny because I kind of, now I'm drawing the picture here, is that you have a great team of staff who are able to pivot and help you breathe. You've also mentioned on the top one is that delegating more and using your team is something that you chose from that list. So if you said family, the fact that you have a great staff, or that you have this dream that is so strong in your mind, if you had to pick one of those to say, I really want to focus on that's going to help me take some steps forward and keep me on track, which of those would you choose?
It'd be my team. Your
team. Okay. So what you have done is now identify something on the top and on the bottom that and you've chosen two, which I would recommend that you all do, choose two, is to think about what are one or two or three or even more things that you can do that will help you on each of those, because you want that goal line to go up. So you want to remove the things that are driving you down, and you want to promote the things that are driving you up. When I say promote, take action on, etc. So I would like for folks to, in your chat function, so that we can get some participation here, is, and we're going to let Patricia off the hook here for a second, but knowing now that we've heard from her and kind of understand her situation, what advice would you have, or what action steps do you think that Patricia could take that would help her on the driving, or on the on the opposing force? Because you want to remove those restrainers, right? So what could she do to impact her ability to organize the madness in her head? And she's already kind of given us some clues, so you can write those down, that's fine. But what are some very specific things that she could do between now and the end of the year, do you think, where she could continue down that path and impact the fact that she can delegate to her team, for example, or use her team more effectively? So I'm going to have you put that in chat right now. I'm going to give you a second to do that. Come on, Patricia needs help. Look at her. She's desperate there. She's just waiting for your wonderful responses.
I
Give her
really
some
am.
ideas.
I really am.
I saw a couple of chats pop up there. Do we have, Michelle, can you read those back to us?
Sure. List one job per staff member that you will no longer take an active role in, where you 100% can and will delegate. And it, you know,
Woohoo!
That's
One.
tough.
Wow.
yeah.
Okay, so wait, I'm just going to stop you right there. I'm sorry, Michelle.
Yep.
So Patricia, is that something you could do?
That is something I am currently working on. It seems like every time I
Okay.
give them something, then they start it and then I take it back, or I try to get in control. So learning how to really let that control go, because you're not used to someone who can actually be, and I've used this word, and I know it's a kind of a low blow type word, and I know it's probably not the best word, but it always comes to the top of my head. But it's hard to find competent people, maybe, and when you have a bunch of them in front of you, it's kind of hard to believe, you know, that this is really a whole bunch of competent people that can really do this. So that is something I'm working on, and it is very
Yeah.
tough.
Okay, so here's something I'm going to throw out there. When you say you're working on it and you're trying to do that, I think what I heard was choose it and do it.
I heard you.
And so I think, and I'm not trying to, you know, be pushy, but I guess I am kind of be pushy.
I like
is to
pushy
say,
people.
try it and just do it, and
Yeah.
then do it for a week and don't think about it and don't worry about it, and, you know, leave it alone and see what happens. I think there were a couple more comments there.
Yes.
Do you mind reading those to us, Michelle,
Yeah,
that might
I'm gonna-
complement what you said?
Yeah, exactly. I'll get to all of them, but I'm gonna kind of skip around to stay on where we're at right now. Someone says that it sounds like Patricia is a big picture thinker. Maybe she could go down to detail things like a business data analysis or creating and mailing invoices. And could you delegate that as your one task, you know, instead of looking at your dream as a whole and how they, and then after you do that, just trusting your team to do it and do it their way.
Yeah.
And then at the top, we also had let go of what you cannot control, which is kind of an overarching theme
Right.
today. Look to your team to share and discern those things. And again, delegate. I think delegate is the main word here.
Yeah.
You brought it up. So we're just all in agreement that it would be great.
Yeah.
Then another member of our group says that she has actually thought of one thing that she can delegate that would be helpful, and it's scheduling commercials. She says, I can for sure give that to someone and not get involved as long as they were trained right. So this is getting other people thinking about things that they can also take off their own plate and give to someone else, a competent team member, like Patricia said.
You know, Michelle, when you said trained right, And Lori, maybe you can help with that, because I think that's a struggle that I'm having right now. And last week's call really helped me realize that just because I feel like they're not trained right, maybe their strengths are here and their weaknesses is what I'm trying to train them up to be. So when you say trained right, that's kind of like maybe not letting it go, but I don't know how to make that work in my head. Like, I want them to be trained, but what does that really mean?
This last comment.
Randy was like, "I'll Rachel and see what Rachel would do." I said, "I don't want to."
Tristan,
Oh,
hold on.
I'll mute him. There we go.
Thank you.
And then one more comment came in that totally builds off what she was just saying. This person says, maybe actively ask your team for their recommendations on how they would do it differently. And then you have an advanced understanding of what their way will look like, which would kind of play off what you were saying about maybe that they would build on their own strengths, right? Instead of the weaknesses.
So you would okay it first. I like that, Cammie. So you would know exactly how they're going to do it, or some variation of that, so that you can get your brain ready for that. That's good, Cammie.
I love that, because then the monkey's a little bit on their back. You don't have to think it all through for them and then tell them how to do it. Maybe they are 80% there. And so, boy, that's cool. I like that idea. That's cool. Good. Okay. So of those things, of the things that you were suggested on your one area, which is, organizing the madness in your head, it sounds to me like the continuing theme there is delegation. And then to delegate, I guess I would like for you to feed back to us, if delegate is your one to do, what are a couple of bullet points under there that resonated with you that you could go and actually do? What would that be?
The delegating, I think I'm okay there. It's really, it's after you delegate and really just letting them be those butterflies and trusting them, because, just trusting them to do it their way, and it'll be okay if it's not exactly the way I pictured it in the bigger picture scheme of things, pictured it to be. So just kind of letting it go and letting them develop something.
Right. So I'm just going to push you and anybody else that's in on the call, is that, so in order for that to happen, then if I talk to you 2 weeks from now, I would ask you, as if I was your coach or your friend or whatever, I'd say, okay, Patricia, I want to know one thing that you turned away to somebody and turned off to somebody else, and how did you set it up so that they owned it, and how did you get them involved, and did you truly let them do it on your own? So that's a rhetorical question, sort of a rhetorical piece of advice to say, 2 weeks from now, if your life depended on you having done that, could you do it?
And you know what's funny, Lori, and I see Jill Hathaway is my coach. That petrifies me. My stomach did something funny when you said that. It really did, if I'm honest. It really did. But facing facing what was tough for you and what challenges you and your struggles is, I guess, the first steps. But that did petrify me. My stomach did something funny when you said that. It's like,
well, take some deep breaths and some antacid, and maybe you'll make it work. All right, let's finish out the other half of this. Is look at all the things that you talked about that could drive you, and one of the things is that you have a great team, and it really does. It's interesting in your particular case, it is complementary to what's on the top, right? So it's using your team. So on this one, I feel a little bit like we kind of let you off the hook a little bit because they're so related. Is there anything else though, when you think about your staff and their ability to pivot and the fact that they help you breathe, how else could you use those characteristics and what do I want to say, sort of exploit those, if you will, even more? So, and I'm going to throw an example out here. There's a member of our team who, I think of a big project that we were on, she's really into getting yourself centered and being very present and meditation and all of that. And for those of us who do have a lot of madness in our head kind of thing, she would start these meetings out sometimes where she'd say, you know what, let's just all kind of close our eyes and take a deep breath. And she's a person who has rituals and is more, has better habits than I do. And so that was something that was a strength of hers. And it really did help because it was a really big project. Harry, it was a hairball and a half. And we would have these huge meetings and that would sort of calm everybody down. And I know that's all the rage right now. And you hear that from everyone, but those are the kinds of things, you know, that I think that you could leverage in your team. What other ideas do any of you have in the chat room as far as how she could tap into various talents that her group might have that keeps people on track as a group when we're going through these hard times? So I'm looking for the chat ideas and we'll give you a minute or so.
Not hearing a lot in chat.
Okay, so I will offer a few suggestions. Oh, here's one.
Oh yeah, maybe do the same type of force field analysis with her team. So, you know, opposing forces versus driving forces. Find out the things that are driving them and opposing them and use that as the cue.
Good, and you might find out more about them that way. That's good. So I'm just going to throw a couple of things out there and then we'll move on. So I think about over my career and just some really, I mean, hairy projects, things that kept you up, you know, till 1 a.m, literally as a team. Okay, we got another one. So
yes,
read that one.
Yep. Is someone, this person is asking, is someone on your team a known problem solver? Is someone good at getting open discussions started? Are certain team members motivated more in certain areas? So even, you know, what I'm reading that as is, can you sort of give them that task to the team? And I know yesterday you were on the HR call and talking about regular meetings. And so this might kind of tie in even to our HR series and giving jobs at those regular monthly or whatever meetings you decided on.
Yeah, I think people, let people use their creativity. When I was talking earlier before somebody made that suggestion, which is a great one, is, you know, we do have to keep things light sometimes. And we used to try and do things that would just kind of break up the monotony or bizarre things like one time we had a contest where we were trying to get a whole bunch of people to do something. And so we said, okay, here's the 3 levels of reward that you're going to get. And I think the top reward, and this is when we could do face-to-face, was if we get this done, guys, we're going to have an ice cream social or an ice cream bar or whatever. And I literally, we did achieve our goal, and I put on an apron and I acted like I was a server at Baskin Robbins, and, you know, it was a fun thing. And then the least, you know, it was still fun, but the thing that would be, if we didn't hit our goal or hit a very low part of the goal, was I used to work at Hallmark, and we had these machines that would come on for an hour every day. And it was free. It was free pop or free coffee. And it was basically swill. We used to joke, but I'm like, okay, well, you know, if we meet this goal, you can all go have your swill. But the point being is we got to have some lighthearted stuff, I think, to keep us laughing and going on. So we can go to the next slide. Pick 2 and go do. So this is incumbent upon you all to think about the force field analysis. You've heard some ideas today. Pick 2, one from the top, one from the bottom, and what is it that you're going to do and implement, just like what we did with Patricia. If you all are, you know, kind of struggling to think about the force field analysis and how that might relate, I always use the example of, if you're trying to explain it to somebody else, is that if you have a goal of losing 10 pounds, you know, what's driving you and what's restraining you? What's driving you is, you know, maybe you've got a class reunion coming up, or maybe you have a goal of by the time you're a certain age, you want to, be a certain weight or whatever. What's opposing is you have no motivation to exercise. You have no, one of mine was I don't have cute clothes to exercise in. So, if I go out and buy cute clothes, then that takes away one of my restrainers. So you can make some fun out of it, but again, what's your goal? What's driving you? What's restraining you? And I believe this is something that it's a pretty simple exercise that can help you get back on track and maybe not try and do it all at once. So I encourage you to pick 2 and go do. So again, nobody's holding you accountable and going to have a grade card or anything, but that's my advice. Pick 2 and go do. You want to go to the next slide? This is just a reminder. I think it's good for us to kind of build every time that we have a workshop. And so last time, I think you probably remember we talked about being self-aware and other aware, and your choices can make a difference. So the more that you're aware of what it is that you're good at, not good at, that you can delegate, not delegate, use your strengths, not, and so forth, then change that or project that over to then knowing what other people, being more aware of other people. And a couple of suggestions were all about that. Ask your people how they want to do things. Ask your people to do a force field analysis. So, but think it through yourself first. So self-awareness, and then the other awareness piece. Then go to the next slide. So this was a build. So if you want to go ahead and hit it again, that would be great. So the resilience piece is big. There were some articles that I actually read in preparation for today. The Harvard Business Review has some, it was funny because I was looking for some articles, and there was one that I thought it was probably written, like last week, and it was written in 2018, and it was talking about all of the unrest and how upside down the world was. And, because there were some things going on, if you remember 2 years ago when we had another election, the things that kind of were peripheral to that as well. And I kind of smirked to myself, and I thought, oh, little grasshopper, little did you know that there was really not that big of a deal when you think about all the stuff that's going on this year. But that resilience and ability to pivot is so important. And if you are able to do that as a leader, then you'll have a bigger impact on others. And it's hard to do. It's hard to be the one in charge that everybody's looking to. And give yourself a break and take care of yourself. That was number one on the list of things to do, is take care of yourself first. And that sounds so easy, but I want to know right now, I would love for you guys to just write in the chat, what are you doing to take care of yourself and help yourself right now? Can you guys please just one word, what are you doing? I'd like to know. I think it'd be important to share.
And I'm just going to take a minute to say we are at the end of our time. If anyone needs.
Oh, I thought it was 11:15. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It will stay open until 11:15, but it was advertised as 11. So if anybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Me time, gym every day. Good. Keep it simple. Love it. Okay. All right. So given that, I will say breathe. Thank you. Laugh. Yes, very much. Very good. So there are some additional slides here that just remind you, lots of wine and jazz music. Oh, that sounds good. To remember your style and what works for you with your style. And, try and use your strengths of your styles. And then if you can't or don't have the characteristics of a certain style, find somebody that does. That orange person is probably going to help you have fun. I'll just tell you that. So do we need to sign off now, Michelle? Music and painting. Woo.
Yeah, you can wrap it up. The room won't kick us out for a few more minutes. So.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody. Pick 2, go do. That's my mantra for the week. And we'll see you next time.
Yep, I will send you these slides after class.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yes, and if anybody
Very informative.
wants to share
Take care.
this,
Thanks,
it'll be
guys.
on YouTube as well. All right.